R-11, State Senator Driggs.
Thank you. As the previous speakers were speaking, I took some little notes to comment on, but I found a theme that pervaded everyone's who's preceded me, and that they've talked in solutions in terms of federal solutions. They talked about a broken immigration system. They talked about a broken enforcement system. They talked about the dangers of having porous borders with drug smuggling and crime and human smuggling, and the national security issue. And as we've discussed possible solutions, it's every solution that came forward has been a federal solution. Now, when we talk about that as a state elected official, when state elected officials or county or municipal elected officials say it's a federal issue, many of our constituents think we're passing the buck. They don't want to hear that from us. That's an excuse. Do something about the issue. And our constituents and voters, they want something done about this issue. They spoke loud and clear when, as a previous panelist, former Representative John Laredo, he talked about the initiative process and how at the ballot box, some of these measures were passing 70%, and it became a political issue. And I think that is what has driven a lot of what's gone on over the last 10 years, at the attempts to make it some of these immigration issues a state issue, because it's been a political winner. And frustrated constituents, voters, come to us, and if you could read the emails that I get on all sides of the issue, there's frustration, and I think that has led to bring forward a state employer sanction law in Arizona and an SB 1070. Those have been the driving force, because when I first ran for elected office in 2006, it seemed everywhere I went, every debate I spoke in, what's your views on immigration? Well, I have some expertise in federal immigration law, and I know how the system works, and I do know that it's a federal issue. And I would say oftentimes, I'm not running for Congress, I'm running for the State House of Representatives. That fell on deaf ears. So people do want to see action by their elected officials. When the state legislature first did it, first took some legislative issue here, it was a former state representative, Jonathan Payton, brought forth the human smuggling law that was signed into law by then Governor Janet Napolitano. It largely copied federal immigration law. And I think it started a process that allowed many state elected officials to say, well, if we copy verbatim a federal statute, we could make it a state statute. And we've done it repeatedly over since about 2005. Interestingly, some portions of SB 1070 did copy federal law, and one of the findings, not in the opinion, but in a concurring opinion by one of the judges, said you can't necessarily do that. You can't take a federal law and just make it into a state law. There's jurisdictions involved. I don't know how that will ultimately end up, but that is something that we need to be mindful of. When I talk about jurisdictions, and I think people get frustrated, I'm a former Maricopa County prosecutor, and I learned kind of about the jurisdictions from then, and from my perspective, Maricopa County, the county prosecutors, we handle certain crimes. There are city prosecutors. They handle misdemeanors. They handle DUIs in city courts. we have the Attorney General's office, and they handle different crimes. We don't all have the same jurisdictions, and I think that might help clarify when we're going to make a state law, how will it be implemented? Because right now there are federal laws, and there's a federal immigration court in Phoenix, in Eloy, and in Florence, and there the federal laws are enforced on a daily basis with very full court calendars. And it's interesting, to remove someone in the United States generally is for a civil offense of unlawful presence. Those aren't slam dunk cases. The federal prosecutors in those cases have to prove that this person is unlawfully present. One thing to be mindful of, when we make it a state crime, were we to make it a state crime to be unlawfully present, now it's a criminal offense. The burden of proof just increased enormously from a preponderance of the evidence to beyond a reasonable doubt. And we'd be asking our state and county prosecutors really to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, while the person has the right to remain silent. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, on or about May 23rd, 2003, somewhere west of Nogales, this person entered the country illegally, and we are going to prove that. It would be very hard for a prosecutor to do that. So I think that when we move forward as a state legislature, what my goal would be to have, to understand what is our goal, and will the law that we are proposing achieve that goal. And I think the only way that from a state perspective and from a federal perspective on how we will enforce immigration laws is with cooperation, and not with the state making laws that either conflict with federal law or even copy federal law if we're not working together. A perfect case in point is a local law enforcement could arrest someone for anything. It could be a state crime, it could be a federal crime. But when a politician is saying, when a local or state politician says, we're going to enforce the laws, well, the state doesn't deport people, and the state doesn't allow people into the country. So in our enforcement of that law, all we are doing is taking them into custody, handing them over to ICE. And then ICE takes it from there, proving that it is a federal issue. So as we look towards solutions, it's not whether the state could come up with a guest worker program, because we can't issue a guest worker card if the people can't come into the country with a visa. So anything that the state would do in a potential solution would have to be done with cooperation, congressional cooperation, and cooperation with the federal government. One thing that I do want to talk about that was mentioned, I think, by a couple of speakers is that we want the best workforce in the world in the United States. And I think that this is what Glenn mentioned, is the best and the brightest are coming to America to attend school, to be educated here. And they get their I-20, and they come here, and they basically, we tell them, as soon as you graduate, you have to leave. You are no longer wanted here anymore. And, we might give them some OPT training, or we let them stay for a year to get kind of a residency in, but then you have to leave. I don't quite grasp that, because to me, I want the best workers in America. It's kind of like if we said to the NBA, we don't want foreign basketball players in the NBA. We don't want let's see, Steve Nash. We don't want Dirk Nowitzki. We don't want, I wish I knew all that. You know, just the Suns alone, just a few years until they started trading all my favorite players over at Atlanta. Also, Goran Dragic. But we want the best, because when we go to an NBA game, we want to see the best players. Could you imagine if we said, no, we don't want you? And that's what we're doing to a lot of the best, and they're going to foreign countries, and they're competing with us, and they're driving jobs away from the United States. And that's a big picture that we need to take into account. What's more important? We need to be more worked up about these great workers leaving our country and jobs that are going overseas than someone that's coming into our country to mow somebody's yard. There's perspective, and I'm not saying to condone anything, but we need to go after what's important and what's going to make our country better, and hopefully with cooperation and with congressional action, we could achieve that.
All right, thanks, Senator.